The soul can't be understood. Through logic, what Tolstoy discovered. Too late. You've read the books, you've studied the patterns, the principles, the truths. You've built a framework in your mind, clean, sharp, logical. You've learned how to think. You know how to explain suffering. You know how to trace trauma to childhood. You can define love, outline fear, predict attachment. You've given words to everything inside you, but still, something's missing. A quiet hunger, a silence between the thoughts, a space reason cannot fill. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling. You ask, what's the point? You get up, distract yourself. You drink water. You scroll. You work. You try to forget that you ever asked, but it doesn't go away. That question, it lingers, like a ghost behind your ribs. It waits for you in stillness. And the strangest part is this: the more you understand, the less you feel. The clearer your logic becomes, the further you drift from yourself. Because the soul is not a formula. It is not made of syllogisms. It doesn't speak in reasons. It moves like wind. It aches like hunger. It whispers in symbols, in silence, in sensation. But you were taught to worship clarity, to trust only what you can measure, to silence your instincts, ignore your intuition, analyze your emotions. You learned how to cut your soul into categories, to box the unexplainable, to deny mystery in favor of mastery. But here's the truth no one told you. Logic has limits, and when it reaches them, it does not open, it collapses. There is a kind of knowing that does not speak, a kind of truth that cannot be proved, and you can feel it when you're alone, when the thinking stops and something else rises, something that has no name, something that trembles in the dark. This is what Tolstoy discovered too late. After the success, the fame, the books, after decades of constructing meaning, defining morality, intellectualizing faith, he found himself standing at the edge of the abyss, and none of his theories could save him. Because the soul does not ask to be explained. It asks to be met, felt, held, trusted. And maybe that's what's been haunting you. Not a lack of knowledge, but a lack of wonder. Maybe the ache isn't confusion. Maybe it's your soul, starving for something real. So let me ask you this. If you could understand everything, but still feel empty inside, would that be enough? You wake up, you check your phone, you check yourself, you remember what needs to be done. There's always something, always someone waiting for your response. But beneath the movement, something's still missing. You feel the echo before you even name it. It's not depression, not quite. It's not sadness either. It's more like a weightlessness that shouldn't feel this heavy. You've done the work, you've journaled, you've reflected, you've read about trauma, about the ego, about inner child wounds. You've mapped yourself like a machine. Every emotion has a label. Every behavior has an origin. You've dissected your own heart with the precision of a surgeon, and still, you feel nothing, not peace, not presence, just the absence of chaos, dressed up as calm. You sit in silence, hoping it will speak to you, but it doesn't. It just sits back, like it's waiting for you to stop pretending that thinking is the same as feeling. You scroll past spiritual quotes. You bookmark posts about nervous system healing. You breathe deeply, like you were told. But inside, the hollowness hums. You've created the perfect internal system, cognitive, conscious, aware, but not alive. You know how to explain your pain, but you don't know how to feel joy. You know how to identify your wounds, but you don't know how to surrender, because everything in your world has been filtered through the mind, and the mind doesn't feel. It interprets. It doesn't ache. It analyzes. And that ache, that subtle, strange ache, it's not asking for another answer. It's asking for your presence. But that scares you, doesn't it? Because presence means not fixing, not understanding, just being. And that feels like falling. So instead, you keep moving. You keep learning. You keep getting better, smarter, clearer, but never closer, never deeper, never softer. You've mastered the language of the psyche, but forgotten how to speak to your own soul. You can tell someone else why they feel disconnected, but not why you do. Because your own disconnection wears a different mask. It looks like control. It sounds like logic. It hides in routines. It disguises itself as progress. And so you confuse healing with knowledge, depth with vocabulary, awareness with freedom. But awareness without tenderness becomes surveillance, a kind of emotional policing that leaves no room for mystery, no room for silence, no room for God. And somewhere inside you, your soul is still standing at the door, quietly wondering if you'll ever come home. Theoretical deep dive, Tolstoy and the collapse of logic. Tolstoy had everything: the fame, the legacy, the genius. By the time he turned 50, he was already a legend, not just in Russia, but across the world. He had written War and Peace. He had written Anna Karenina. He had dissected history, morality, love, death. He had built a cathedral of thought and stood proudly at its altar. But one morning, something cracked. He couldn't get out of bed. He couldn't write. He couldn't lie to himself anymore. The silence inside him had grown louder than any applause. In his private journals, he confessed, "I could give no reasonable meaning to any actions or to my whole life." The truth was that life is meaningless. He had done what you've done, tried to explain everything, tried to think his way into peace, tried to reduce the chaos of life into tidy moral systems. But the soul doesn't want to be explained, and that was his mistake. He thought faith could be reasoned into. He thought meaning could be built like a house, with logic as the foundation. But logic only works on what can be measured, and the soul can't be measured. How do you explain longing, or grief, or love that has no purpose, no benefit, no clarity? You don't. You feel it. But Tolstoy didn't know how. He tried to solve the human condition like a math problem. But the soul doesn't ask to be solved. It asks to be seen. And that's what broke him. Not failure, but success without depth, fame without faith, answers without silence. He had arrived at the top of the mountain and discovered it was made of paper. In his writings, he described this moment not as depression, but as a spiritual death. He wrote, "Something strange began to happen with me. At first, I experienced moments of bewilderment, of an arrest of life, as though I did not know how to live, what to do." He wasn't lost because he didn't know the facts. He was lost because he had no relationship with the mystery. Because mystery, that quiet, irrational, sacred thing, is where the soul lives. And when you exile mystery, you exile yourself. This is what makes Tolstoy so human. Not his brilliance, not his mastery, but his breakdown. Because it wasn't weakness, it was his soul finally speaking, after a lifetime of being silenced by the mind. He began to realize, all the wisdom in the world means nothing if it cannot hold your ache. Imagine a single flame, flickering quietly in the dark. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it just glows. It isn't powerful. You could put it out with one breath, but still, it gives light, it gives warmth, it exists. This is your soul, not the soul you read about in books or the one dissected by psychologists, but the one you feel in the stillness when you're no longer trying to be anything. It doesn't need a definition. It doesn't ask to be understood. It just wants space, stillness, attention. And when the wind of logic blows too hard, when you overthink, overanalyze, overexplain, that flame begins to dim. Not because it's wrong, not because it's weak, but because it wasn't built for storms made of thought. The soul isn't efficient. It's not optimized. It's not productive. It doesn't care about achievement. It only cares about truth, not the truth that can be argued, but the one that feels like home. And the more you try to trap it, the more it slips away. Because the soul is not a system. It's a presence. It shows up when you slow down, when you stop proving, when you stop fixing. It rises when you rest. It speaks in images. It shows you something without explaining it, like a candle flickering in a room full of noise, barely visible, yet realer than anything else. You've been chasing light by building machines. But what if the light you're seeking has been flickering inside you all along? What if it's not a matter of finding the truth, but of protecting the flame? Can you do that? Can you stop trying to solve the soul and just let it glow? So let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt real? Not productive, not focused, not in control, but real. When was the last time you didn't need to explain yourself, even to yourself? You know so much. You've read, you've reflected, you've built entire philosophies inside your head. But have you ever sat with your soul without trying to fix it? Have you ever just let it ache without giving it a name? Because maybe the pain isn't a problem. Maybe it's a signal. Maybe your emptiness is the soul's way of asking for more space. And what if the silence you keep escaping isn't emptiness at all, but the doorway back to yourself? What if every distraction is a quiet betrayal of the flame? You think you're doing the right thing, learning, growing, healing. But healing without presence is just performance, and performance is exhausting. So you keep building more structure, more language, more rituals, more understanding, but none of it touches the part of you that just wants to be held, seen, heard, without reason, without context, without improvement, just as you are. Because the soul doesn't want a thesis, it wants your attention. It wants you to stop analyzing your feelings like symptoms and start treating them like messages. Not every ache needs a label. Not every longing needs to be explained. Some things are just meant to be felt. And if you're honest, how often do you allow that? How often do you sit in the quiet without trying to escape it? How often do you ask your soul what it needs and actually listen? Not to your thoughts, not to your plans, but to that soft tremble under the skin. The one you keep pushing down. You say you want connection, but can you even connect with yourself? Or have you silenced the voice inside you because it speaks a language you were never taught? Maybe that's why it hurts. Not because something's wrong with you, but because you're living entirely in your head, while the rest of you waits to be remembered. And now, you've heard the questions. You've heard the answers that don't quite fit. You've heard the invitation to stop looking, to stop trying to solve, to just feel. But as you sit here, what is it that you're really searching for? Is it clarity, peace, purpose? Or is it something deeper, something more elusive, something that cannot be held by words, but only known in the silence between them? Maybe the truth has never been about knowing. Maybe it's always been about being. About showing up, not with all the answers, but with a willingness to listen. Because isn't it true that the more you know, the more you realize how little you really understand? How many truths have you stumbled upon, only to find they lead you to more questions? How many books have you read, only to feel emptier at the last page? You keep seeking, you keep searching for something outside of you, a purpose, a meaning, a way forward. You believe if you look far enough, you will find it. But maybe the search itself is the problem. Maybe the moment you stop searching is the moment you find it. What if the answers you've been chasing have always been inside you? What if you've been looking at the wrong place this whole time? Because maybe the truth has never been about fixing. Maybe it's always been about acceptance. Not accepting the world as it is, but accepting you as you are. And when you accept yourself fully, with all your flaws, your desires, your darkness, then the answers are no longer as important. Because when you truly accept yourself, you no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to measure your worth against something or someone. You simply are. And in that being, everything becomes clear. But how do you get there? How do you stop the constant searching? How do you find peace when you've spent a lifetime running from it? The answer is simpler than you think. It's not found in more knowledge, more effort, or more doing. It's found in the pause, in the silence, in the moments between thoughts when you stop trying to be something more and just allow yourself to be. Maybe the search isn't about the destination. Maybe it's about the letting go, the surrender, the willingness to admit that you don't have to have all the answers, that perhaps the only answer that matters is you are enough. Because all the searching in the world will never answer that. All the knowledge, all the understanding, none of it will make you feel enough until you realize that you've been enough all along. And as you sit here now, what if you stopped for a moment, just for a moment, and allowed yourself to breathe, to just be with what's in front of you, to be with yourself? Because the truth isn't something to be understood with the mind. It's something to be felt in the body, in the stillness, in the way your heart beats and the way your breath flows. It's the silence in between all the noise, the space where everything finally makes sense. Not because you've figured it out, but because you've stopped trying to. And what if that's the key? What if, instead of running, you simply allowed yourself to sit with it? Sit with the truth. Sit with the discomfort. Sit with the fear. Sit with the longing. And just let it be. Maybe that's what you've been looking for all along. A place where you can simply be, without needing to explain, without needing to change, without needing to do anything. Just to be. So, let this be your invitation. Stop looking for answers outside. Stop trying to figure it all out. Stop chasing peace, and start by sitting in the silence, in the stillness. Because in that space, you'll find that the answers you were seeking were never somewhere else. They were always here, waiting for you to stop and listen. And when you finally stop, you will hear it. That quiet, soft voice whispering to you, you are already home.